And it was one of those situations where it crushed. I mean, it took over the internet. That idea changed my career. I delete so much stuff. The volume of content that I put out is probably 15% of the volume that I create. That first watch that you get back, knowing that you can't do a damn thing about it, is like, it should be liberating. If it's not, this industry might not be for you. I gotta hire somebody to get me 15 different brands and get me in a rotation of having this brand on and this brand on and this brand on. And then I was like, if he doesn't have an agent and he's doing this well, I can figure this shit out.
All right, Kyle Sockwell. Tell me about your brand.
I never really expected to be in a situation where I would be a brand. I always expected to be working with and building brands. One term that people throw around in the swimming space, which is where I operate, is Swim-Fluencer, and I hate it. I think it makes me sound like I work at like Toys R Us. So I'm a media personality in swimming, and pretty much just an entertainer is kind of how I would say. I don't know, job title's weird. I would go swimming media personality.
Swimming media personality. I like it. Swimming media personality, probably not a ton of competition.
No. I mean, there's a few out there. There's not a ton. It's a very new space. So I had a call earlier today with one of the big brands in swimming, Unnecessary Flex. And I talked about swimming as kind of like a pasture, and there's really nothing on it. It's like a freshly tilled, like 25-acre property with like a few seeds planted and a couple that are starting to sprout a little bit. It's not a forest by any means, but a lot of other sports are. And so I'm just trying to be that first tree and kind of take all the credit for all the cool stuff everyone else is doing behind the scenes and be the entertainment guy. It's a weird space.
So one of the things that gets talked about a lot when conversations swirling around like creators and making stuff and putting out content on YouTube and Instagram, one of the biggest things that you hear all the time is niching down, right? So find your niche, find your very specific thing that you can do that doesn't necessarily have, you know, the biggest, broadest topics. Swimming.
Mm-hmm.
Was there any level of thought that went into it that said, this is something that desperately needs someone to do it, or were you just doing it?
I saw the need. I didn't know what it was specifically, but I saw it. When I was 19, I looked at the sport as kind of a whole from a business perspective. It was like, this thing is so broken, but no one's trying to fix it. And now the sport has grown to the point where everyone is starting to understand it. And I understood it at 19, but I didn't know how to fix it. I didn't know exactly what that path would look like. And so I stumbled my way through it, and I'm starting to really figure it out now. But I think I stumbled through it okay enough. It was an absolute grind. I mean, I haven't stopped. Literally haven't stopped. I don't think I've taken more than a week off total.
Well, yeah, I mean, you said you've been doing this for a year, but really, you know, I thought about it the other day when we worked together. It was probably 2019 or something like that, 2018. Yep. I remember specifically you had a Twitter account that had like 40, 50,000 followers.
I did start 10 years ago on just Twitter and Vine, making terrible stuff that I wouldn't even really consider reps at this point, and started doing just like Twitter commentary and just talking with my thumbs, which is a completely different job than talking with your mouth for sure, because you can type it out, you can edit it, you can delete it, you know, you can do a lot of different stuff. But when you're talking, it's a completely different situation. So I did that for a long time, and then kind of allowed myself to just be bad for a long time. I mean, looking back at the content that I made when I was 19, I mean, it's like, it's pollution. And one of my main things that I think about now is, especially with the way that the internet operates at this point, and this is kind of the current iteration of what I'm seeing, is to try to not pollute it, because there's so much pollution out there. And there are different versions of what people consider to be good content. And I've gone through, I think, 30 different iterations of pollutive content. And now I'm at the point where I think my content at least is generating some kind of value. I'm okay with deleting a lot of content before it goes live. A lot of it. I delete so much stuff. The volume of content that I put out is probably 15% of the volume that I create. And I've done that since the beginning. I figured out how to be okay with creating something and spending time on it and looking at my brand and saying, this could hurt my brand because it's not good. And being okay with deleting that instead of just saying, I got to put this out because I haven't put out a piece of content in 2 days, has been the thing that has gotten me to the point now where my intuition and my just creativity and understanding of what works and what doesn't is to the point where most of the content that I put out and create is good. And I can stop an idea a lot earlier than when I have it in my queue on Instagram and I watch it with the like, comment, and share thing. So I always watch it in that preview so I can see exactly what it looks like on someone's phone. And I'll delete it right out of there. I could think it's awesome until I get it to that point, and I'll notice that if I was on Instagram, I wouldn't like this, and I'll delete it right there. And that's been something that I've done this entire time. So like the constant has been, I'm okay with deleting work and doing a homework assignment and throwing it in the trash and telling the teacher that I refuse to turn it in because she would be wasting her time reading it because I know it's an F, you know? So, I mean, it was something that I saw. There was a gap that I saw. I'm still not really sure if I know exactly what it is. At this point, I think it's entertainment. There just isn't enough entertainment in swimming. But it was one that I didn't know I was trying to fill for probably like 8 years. So I think I've got it now. But if you asked me 2 years ago, I probably would have said that I have it now. So it's one of those situations where I'll continually think that I've got it. I'll think that I've got it. And maybe at some point I will, and I'll let myself believe that I do. I really think I'm close this time. But yeah, I mean, I saw a gap and I just didn't know exactly what that gap was.
Now that you're, in it and you're being very successful, and I'm sure that there's still some anxiety though, right? Like, how do you deal with that?
So this type of business, I think, is one where a lot of people burn out really quickly because they have this expectation that they should just be able to do it, which is really weird because it's, I would say, one of the more difficult things to do. You're sitting here, typically, when you're recording a video, you're alone in your room. It's dead silent. You hit record, and you're staring into a little dot on a camera. No one else is around. You take your headphones off, it's dead silent. It's a very, very weird thing to do. There's no discourse. The only discourse that you have is you and then a pause and, trying to regather your thoughts and get back on train. And it's just a weird thing to do generally. And I think really the anxiety goes away as you get those reps going. So a really good friend of mine, we both know him, Blake, from We Used to Know Tomorrow. He was definitely the guy that got me over that first hurdle, which is post something and just let it be bad and just eat it. Because I posted that first video, and I think the way to get over that anxiety is post it and then watch it back immediately. So when I initially got into like the content space, it was really via live commentary, which is a super aggressive way to get into any sort of commentary, to do it live. And I still get, the most nervous I get is when I'm live on air, because you can't edit it. You can't chop something out. You can't say, oh, you know what, I'm going to record over that and do that again and then put it in the middle. Or, when I edit videos, sometimes I'll have like a word where I'll get stuck in between two and I'll dub over it and then drop the audio on left and right and throw something on top of it so that you don't notice that I messed up and didn't want to re-record the video. Live commentary, you can't do that. But that first video that I posted was, I think it was probably about 4 minutes, I could be way off, of me just talking to a camera. And it was chopped at the beginning and at the end with this microphone setup, raw audio, raw video off of my iPhone like 11. And it was so bad. But once it was posted, that first watch that you get back, knowing that you can't do a damn thing about it, is like, it should be liberating. If it's not, this industry might not be for you, because that's how you learn, is watching that video back immediately and noticing something and thinking, okay, in my next video, I'm going to change this. I would change that there. I would change that there. And some of those things you might not retain or remember, that probably means it's not important. But if you retain one thing and you release 1,000 videos, that's your 10,000 hours from my perspective, is you get 1,000 videos to watch back and learn from. And if you don't get to rep 6, then, I mean, you're not going to make it. If you don't get to rep 2, you're definitely not going to make it. But I think a lot of people bail after rep 2, 3, 4 because they have this expectation, a super unnecessary expectation that they should just be good at it because they talk to people like in regular life. Whereas, if you recorded a conversation that you had with somebody at like a gas station, no one would like want to watch it. Maybe that's, a very raw piece of content. Honestly, at this point with how edited things are, that could work.
That sounds like a cool OnlyFans, talking to people at gas stations.
Yeah, it wouldn't be bad. But yeah, I mean, long story short, I mean, you just learn, you just get thick skin. And I like to compare it to, being in shape. You have to go to the gym. And if you don't go to the gym and you show up, 2 years later and you try to bench, it's probably not going to go very well. And you're going to get really, really sore in 3 days.
When you get to that point where you're like, okay, it's ready to go, I'm going to hit, upload, and then we're good to go. There's something about right after you upload it, or right when you show it to somebody for the first time, if you're sitting next to somebody or whatever, something changes where you're watching it with fresh eyes and you see something immediately that is wrong. Like something about another person sitting right next to you or standing right next to you or knowing that it's live changes it somehow, right? You're so close to it and then it's out there and then immediately there's 10 things you would have changed.
Yeah, I think that's a perspective that applies to everything in marketing and branding. That first perspective and that first look, that first scroll through, I think is one of the most valuable things out there. I mean, without a doubt. And it takes a minute to get to the point where, you can look at a good product. So I think it's getting more difficult for me, because I see things now and I have these, because I'm pretty good. I'm pretty good at this stuff now. So I know how to engage an audience. The things that I look at now, I'm trying to figure out whether or not they actually would be things that would make the video perform better. So I see these things that I'm like, all right, so I could spend 2 hours fixing that piece. And it might look a little bit more polished. But I'm fighting this battle now where I'm like, I could do it. Should I do it? And would my audience and my brand or my audience, would they be receptive of that? Or would it be too polished? Because I do think there's an element to what I've done for a long time that's made it feel like I'm a guy in his bedroom just trying to make it. And an audience does respect that. Now, jumping into a studio is something that I want to do at some point for sure. I think that jump, and I've gone back and forth between should I do it slowly or should I just flip a switch and one day I'm in a studio and it's hyper produced. I'm leaning towards the latter because I think there's just this weird thing where you get to this point. I guess it's not weird. It's just a thing where you get to this point where the decisions stop being, oh, this is easy, just learning how to edit, learning how to chop, move your audio from you talking before that next scene gets rolling to keep someone engaged before you have the picture, chase that audio. If you know what, I don't know if that makes sense. You get to this point where you're starting to make these decisions where you're watching movies and you understand what they're doing, but you're not making movies. Some people on YouTube do make movies and they're beautiful and they're incredible and they have massive budgets. But if I apply too much of the movie editing to a YouTube video, it might not work. And I've tried some things and noticed some engagement drops when I start to really get into the nitty gritty of the creative components and really thinking extremely like motion picture quality editing and dramaticism and, risers and stuff like that. And people are just like, that's not why I'm here. That's not what you do. So there's this weird battle that you get to when you get good at something where you have to start to choose whether or not you should be good at something or whether or not you should try to make something perfect.
You have the opposite problem that I do. So I've been doing content creation, brand management, just general marketing for 20 years. And I've never been on camera for any of those brands. I've never been a personality for those brands. And so when I decided that I wanted to start doing this stuff, in my head, I had the opposite. So I had a lot of anxiety around, well, I've done this for so long. I have to apply all of the things that I know, and it's got to look this way, and it's got to have a script, and it's got to have all the production value and the lighting and the sound and the, the camera and everything, because I've done it for so long, and the stuff that I'm talking about is sort of about creating brands and creating stuff that's as good as it gets. So I'm jealous that you're like, well, maybe I shouldn't make it look that much better.
I mean, I think some of my best videos have taken me 3 hours. It's weird. Some of them they need to be scripted, and I don't know it until I'm trying it. So I start very broad, and I'll have a topic. I'll just hit record on both of these things, and some of my best videos. And it's interesting because some of them, when I end a recording, I'll talk for like 10, 12 minutes. I'll be like, damn, like that's good. Like that's going to be a good video. And then a lot of them, it'll take me 15, 20 different tries, and I'll finish recording and I'm like, that was bad, but I'm just going to export it. I'm going to throw it into Final Cut, and I'm just going to start chopping through it and see if I can make it good. And every single time, 100% of the time I think that way, it turns out to be good. And so there's this weird thing where you go through watching yourself, and I try not to get too far ahead in my head while I'm recording it and thinking about, oh, I'm going to, edit that there while I'm still talking, which is once you get into that situation, you start running down that, snowball of a hill where you're like thinking about editing it while you're still trying to talk. And then you're like, oh, I shouldn't be thinking about editing while I'm still talking. And then I try to get back and I'm like, what was my next point? That's where the video ends at 3 minutes and I push stop and then I start over. But I mean, I've had videos where it's one take, 20 minutes of straight talking, and it's great. And I've had videos where it's taken 50 different takes and it ends up being really good, and I think it's terrible. So, I mean, it's just like, it's a mess. It is just a messy space to be in, especially in, I think, the like live content. So it's almost live. Like I have to react to things really quickly and get them done really, really fast if something breaks and I need to put something out there. And I've started to lean into Instagram a lot more than YouTube because it's a lot easier to do that. Because in the back of your mind, So you're recording and you're like, I got to get this done in a few takes. I got to get this into Final Cut. I got to edit it. Soft editing, a C on the paper is good here. It doesn't need to be an A+, because an A+ turned in a week. Teacher's throwing that in the trash because it's not relevant anymore. A C could turn into an A just because I get it out quick enough.
The skills that you've learned working with brands and for brands, what kind of things are you applying to your personal brand?
The atmosphere in content shifts so quickly that most of the things that I've learned 5 years ago just wouldn't work anymore.
Right.
I think a lot of the things that I've learned a year ago still don't work or don't work anymore. And it's one of those tough situations where you get into where you're trying to, talk about the 10 years of marketing experience you have while a kid could come running in and just walk all over you. And so I think one of the things that I've learned from, my career now that I'm almost 30, and now I'm old, is exactly that. I was that 22-year-old kid working in sports media and running and like stomping people. And now I'm getting to the point where I talk to people that are 22, 23 that are telling me like, you got to be doing this. Like, why aren't you doing this? And I'm like, no, come on. Like, I got this. Things are working for me. And then I look at my content and I realize that I'm applying a lot of things to my content that are very similar to the things that those people are telling me, because my DMs are full of people pitching me video ideas. And one of those things was swimming in jeans. And that's where like things really took off when I did a 50 butterfly down and back in a short pool in jeans. That was a video idea that was pitched to me by somebody a long time ago. And I was like, yeah, no one's going to let me do that in a pool. No one's going to let me do that. And it was one of those situations where it crushed. It took over the internet. And so I kind of had that aha moment where I was like, all right, so I think I know everything and I think I got this. Like, get away from me. Like, I don't need to hear any of your input. To like, that idea changed my career. And so I'm in a situation now where my brand is growing to the point where I'm hiring a 22-year-old immediately. And a lot of the feedback is going to be a hard yes. And it's not going to be like, no, like this is my brand. I'm not letting you touch it. And this is exactly what I'm going to do and how I'm going to do it. Because why hire the person in the first place? So, I mean, there's not really too many specific things that I've pulled with me from working with brands just because the space has changed so quickly. But the delegation is something that I'm absolutely going to apply as quickly as possible and try, even though I know it's, it's so much easier said than done, especially when you're talking about your brand, because it is you and it's a reflection of you, and having other people manage that is terrifying. But the gene thing is what got me, because if that idea hadn't happened, like, I mean, that was an international thing that really took off. I mean, I had people tagging me in videos doing the thing that I started, and they were getting 750,000 views on Instagram. And it was just one of those things where I was like, I almost didn't do this. And it would have been because I'd gotten my own way and thought, no, this kid doesn't have enough experience. He doesn't get it. He doesn't get like what goes into it and, you know, where I'm trying to take my brand. And I don't think I'm going to like put out a video of me doing a mile in cargo shorts anytime soon. Maybe I will, maybe I should. But at the same time, you know, like if someone pitches me that idea and they're like, hey, this would be awesome, it's going to be hard to turn down. So it's one of those situations where I'm trying to find that balance of how many ideas do I take in and actually create? How many ideas am I actually right that are going to suck? Because some of them are bad. Some of them are really bad, but some of them I think are good, and I get in my own way because it wasn't my idea. So I don't know. I don't know if that answers your question. The landscape just changes so much that it's like, I feel like what I tried to do a month ago like doesn't apply anymore.
There might be the tip of the day in there. Some really good advice and some good wisdom there from, you know, I think it's kind of an old adage of like, be okay with killing your darlings, you know, whether it's writing or, you know, video content or photography or whatever. You work on something for a really long time and you know, you're sort of pot committed to something and you're going and you're going and you're going. And when you get a little perspective and you step back and you go, I should just let this go. You know, it really sucks because you have all of that time invested in something, but you know in your heart of hearts that it's just like, this sucks, or it's not a net positive at the end of the day. And if you're really, it's, you know, this is the thing that I'm fascinated with the most here is like, I've done this for 20 years and it's really only clicked in the last year or so of like, there is no difference between a brand and this new world of like influencer, personal brand, content creator. It's the same rules. There is no difference anymore. It's the same thing. And, you know, having that same level of, this is going to hurt my brand, right? Because I do that, you know, with the brands I work with for a lot of things, right? We'll spend a ton of time on an idea and really flesh it out and keep going on something. And then you get to that 1 yard line. You're like, you know what? We screwed this up. Like, we got to bail. We got to come up with something new. And, you know, 10 times as hard when you're talking about yourself.
Yeah, 10 times as hard. And I mean, I would say that you can get to both ends of the spectrum. You know, luckily, I can just do that. If you get to a situation where you have a company that has investors and has a board and has expectations, it gets a lot more difficult just saying we're going to nuke this, because you have 8 people asking you why, and you have to explain it to them and hope that they share the same viewpoint as you, because you're not the 100% owner of your brand. And that's why I'll never give away anything. You know, the brand that I'm starting to build, I might give away 5% of that. I will never in my life be a minority shareholder, because for that exact reason. So you do have that kind of spectrum where when you're 100% stakeholder, it can be difficult to look at something that you've created that is only you and say, like, it's hard to delete this thing that I've created. But also, I can say that. No one can tell me, no, you can't delete that. And so you get to this point where you have all these other stakeholders that are telling you, hey, that's a cool thing you created. I think we need to post it. and you have this thing and you're trying to explain it and trying to explain it. And sometimes it'll work, sometimes it won't. And then I see posts on Instagram from brands all the time. And I'm like, what were you thinking? Like that's bad. That is pollution. It's got 7 likes. It's got 1 comment and it's hashtags on it. And I'm just like, what value did you create? And at what point while you were creating that, did you think at any point in time, this piece of content and this idea could have created value?
I don't know. There's something weird about like the freedom that comes along with also you're on the hook, right? So when you're working with a team, handful of people, brand, business, client, whatever, when something doesn't work, you know, we all kind of agreed on this thing. I sold it and you bought it and we said this was good and now it failed. Oh, well, let's try harder next time. Or you know, it's easy to point to somebody and say like, we could have done that differently or whatever. But when it's all you and you're on the hook from the idea all the way through, and then there's no one to look at and there's no one to point to except for yourself, there's something really weird about that. And this whole creator economy and this whole, you know, individualized channel thing that's working now, there's a definite healthy aspect to that part of it where you're actually kind of learning a lot about yourself.
Yeah, it's healthy and unhealthy, I would say. It hurts. It absolutely hurts when you make something and put it out there with expectations. The first video I put out on Instagram or on YouTube, I was so naive. I thought I was going to put it out there and it would have 100,000 views in the first hour. I just had no idea like what to compare it to. And so I got burnt out real fast and then had to come back in and got burnt out and had to come back in. And now I haven't posted on YouTube in like 30 days, I mean, maybe more, close to 40, because I was getting burnt out. And I went to Olympic trials and I was like, the time I'm putting into these videos and the amount of effort it takes to put together a 14-minute video, I could create 10 really compelling, engaging reels that are going to grow my brand 10 times as fast as those YouTube videos. I was all in on YouTube because it made money. So back to the money component, I was like, man, I could be making $15,000, $20,000 a month off YouTube. I was doing math. I was running so many CPM calculations. I mean, it was ridiculous. I was like, if I get 40 million views a month and this amount of views per video, and also I got this and that, I'm going to make $40,000 a month and I'm going to be so rich. And the moment that I abandoned that and started to create content that I thought was valuable and I thought was good and I thought was fun on Instagram, a part of that evolution of my mindset was, I don't think I'm ready for YouTube yet. You know, one of the toughest things about being your own brand is you are your own everything. I don't have an agent, you know. I was so close to signing an agent, so close. And luckily I got to actually meet him in person. But I was listening to an interview that Pat McAfee did with, I forget who it was. And I wish I remembered because I want them to get credit, where they were like, man, your agent must be working overtime. And he just goes, I don't have an agent. And I was so close. Like I was at the point where I was like, I got to hire somebody to make me money. I got to hire somebody to get me 15 different brands and get me in a rotation of having this brand on and this brand on and this brand on. And then I was like, if he doesn't have an agent and he's doing this well, I can figure this shit out. And at some point, I'm definitely going to delegate, but not delegating that was a huge save for me, for sure. Because if you get to the point where you start to work with people that an agent just goes and pulls you into, and you start to sign all these contracts and do all this stuff, that's kind of looping back into our previous conversation. That's where creativity dies. And in all of my contracts and all of my conversations that I have now, I am non-negotiable on me having full creative control. I absolutely want to partner with someone in the right space and the right team that will pour gas on the fire and get excited about ideas with me. But I am 0% interested. And actually, my contracts now, the ones that I sign, I refuse to sign a contract that is 9 pieces of content for X amount of money. because that's where creativity dies as well. And if you're working with a creative as a brand, I guarantee you, unless you picked the wrong creative, if you say, here's $10,000 for this project, run. 100% of the time, you're going to get better output from that creative than if you said, we will give you $10,000 for 3 long form videos, 10 short form videos, 3 pictures on your Instagram, and 5 Instagram stories. Because now you start to switch that part of the brain that goes, wow, with $10,000, I can do this thing and create these things. And now it's my idea that I'm starting to get to run with, on my own. And that's what you're paying for. Every single conversation I have, since I'm my own agent and I didn't pull someone else in to get me a freaking expo sponsorship, that I would be like, I could probably still crush that, honestly. But at the same time, it's like, if Expo gave me $10,000 and was like, convince the swimming community that they need to buy Expo, instead of saying, we want you to post on your story 3 times, I 100% could convince the swimming community to buy more Expo markers and generate value for them from my content at the same time. Like, that's the conversation that you should be having.
When we find a creator at Still Austin, when we start to develop a relationship with a new influencer or creator or whatever, that's the thing I always say. Because I've been on both sides of the table, both sides of the conversation. I always just say, look, I'm not going to tell you what to do. You're in the position that you're in because of the things that you've done for your audience. And I know that if I start to tell you how to create content for your audience, then the entire reason I'm talking to you in the first place, which is get your audience on board with my company, my brand, my product, it's compromised and it doesn't make any sense. So, I think I learned this a little bit from the agency side, where it was like, hey, you hired this agency to do the things that you don't know how to do. Why are you now trying to tell me how to do the thing? Right. Mm-hmm. So, being on that side of the table and the other side of the table, when we go talk to these guys, I just go, I love what you do. Your audience loves what you do. I think that there's a fit here with the product. And, essentially here's the contract that just says when you get paid, go, and especially on something like, with Still Austin Whiskey, the guys that we talk to, I don't go, hey, you can only talk about Still Austin Whiskey. Don't talk about other brands, or, if you have something that's a potential competitor or in the same space or whatever, you're not allowed to. Like, that's old school, right? Like, you drink Pepsi and you never drink Coke, or you use an Android phone and never be photographed with an iPhone or whatever. I understand why they got to do those contracts, because they're massive and obviously it looks bad on PR, but
we got a big old board there.
It's a big board.
It's a lot of people.
Big board, big whiteboard with lots of Expo markers. But
a lot.
The point is in this scenario, in this economy of creators, your whole brand is authenticity, and your whole brand is what you've created. And if you compromise that in the slightest just for the paycheck, we all consume social media at this point. You see these creators that you follow and how they've evolved over time, and you can pick it out right away. Oh, okay, that dude's a shill. Or now he's, slanging this product that makes no sense for his brand or whatever it is, or he's starting to talk about a product in a amazing way that everybody else is dogging, like, okay, what's going on here? And you sniff it out a mile away.
I had a call earlier today, and it was that exact thing. Most of the call with a large brand, a transformative contract for me, was me convincing them that me signing with one company in the space doesn't completely void my authenticity. And I spun it back around on them probably about 8 times. I was like, the only way that my authenticity takes a hit is if you don't let me continue running and continue doing my thing. Of course, when I am creating content, I will be in your product, because I want to be. And there's a reason I'm having this conversation with you. There's a reason that I have one sponsor right now and not 40, when I get 2 emails a day from people asking me to create a one-off YouTube video for $500. and I turned down $500 that I could make in an hour. It's a pretty good hourly rate. It's such a difficult conversation to have, though, because some people are just so stuck in that mentality. And I totally get it from a brand perspective, especially when you get to the size of a brand where you have those people that might come chomping down at you and say, we're paying this guy a lot of money. Why is he talking to, someone that's drinking Buffalo Trace? Why did he just try Buffalo Trace on his podcast, a different podcast? And it's when you get into that controlling mentality. And a point that I really wanted to make on this call is so many brand people still think that consumers are dumb and that they don't know what they're looking at anymore. We are in a completely different world where people scroll on their phones. They know when they're getting advertised to, and they either decide that they like it or they don't. There's so many micro decisions going on in someone's head when they're looking at an advertisement, because they know whether or not that creator or that person is just saying, like, let me grab this so I don't give away free promo. This is my own free promo. Like taking an Instagram photo. And this swimmers, if any swimmer somehow listen to this, so many swimmers will just hold up a product next to them, take a photo, and then write out a completely bullshit paragraph with hashtags at the bottom and tag the company because it's obligatory. And the way that you take that from here to the moon is you become a Sugar Sean O'Malley and you create a brand around yourself as well as a product, which is you being a fighter. So that's in the UFC space. Shout out to Imran. Sean is incredible at that. Zero swimmers are even 10% as good at it as Sean. Just like annoyed at how much stuff you see on the internet, and especially I see on the internet, and can just look at it and know that it was just such a miss, and know that other people are seeing it as a miss too. Like, people are smart. They get it now. They know when they're being advertised to, and they know when people are trying to pull one over on them from an advertising perspective. And so finding the right creators and letting them just be authentic and enjoy your product. I think one of the biggest things that a brand can do is actually see through the bullshit of someone telling them, I love your product. I'm going to use your product. I use it every day. And that's why I want to be partnered with you, versus someone that's like, I want to be a part of your team because I drink Still Austin whiskey all the time. And I think it's great. And I want to talk to people about that. And I want to figure out how we can work together. That's the relationship you want. And that's the person that you tell, drink whatever you want, do whatever you want, but continue loving our product and just love it a little bit more publicly.
Yeah. I mean, honestly, the best partnerships, you don't even have to say that. It's like what you just said. Like, of course I'm in. Like, we're talking because I'm in. Unfortunately, not everyone has that mentality. There are a lot of people out there that are going to take that $500 paycheck. They're going to, shill whatever stuff's out there. And, I'll be honest with you, again, from the other side of the table, from the brand standpoint, it just doesn't work. It doesn't work for either of you, right? Like, on one side, it's going to erode the creator's reliability, their integrity, their influence more than anything. And then on the brand side, it's just going to create a negative interaction with that creator because I paid you all this money and you did this thing and it didn't work. Well, you could have done it better or whatever, or let's, do it again this way. And then you're just off to the races on the wrong path. I'm telling you, the best guys that I've had success with over the years in terms of influencers and creators are the guys that we're attracted to because we like what they're doing. They're themselves. They've got their voice. The audience that they've built is reacting to that authenticity and that voice that they've created and that personality that they are. And we just say, here's some money. Figure it out.
Yeah.
It's really that's simple.
The partnership I'm chasing.
Yeah, man.
Is like, just give me, because that's when creativity happens, right? And so all of the contracts that I chase right now are just building my own income, because I am always going to dump a lot of my own money back into things. Always. I'm going to take care of myself, but a lot of that money is going to be spent back into things. And I know that a lot of my value is just doing this, but also if, a company shows up and is like, We're going to pay you $10,000 a month. And the conversation stops there. My brain immediately goes, all right, so with $10,000, I can do $1,000 with this and $1,000 with this. And those can kind of play together and create this many pieces of content. Whereas if you say, we want 15 pieces of content, now I'm writing out on my whiteboard, okay, by this day, I need this one done and this one done. And then the process just is completely flipped backwards. And I think it works both ways, maybe. I think more often than not, it works better to go from this is what I have, this is what I came away with. And there's just so many brands that won't do it. So many.
One thing that I always try and tell to artists, creatives, people that are making stuff is don't get frustrated by the fact that you haven't found it yet, because we're out there. You know, we are definitely out there, and we understand the business side of things and the creative side of things. And we understand that the only way that it's going to work is to do it the right way. And if you run into 100 people that are, you know, trying to get you to show their products, giving you way too much creative direction, giving you deadlines, and as you said, like, give me 10 pieces of content for this money or whatever it is, just run away, you know, because I promise you that the brands are out there that will actually want to do it the right way. And if you save yourself for those guys, you're going to be better off. They're going to be happier. They're going to make more money. Everyone's going to win. And you're not going to feel gross the day after.
Yeah, you got to eat it for a long time.
You got to eat it.
You know, you have to. So many people will just nuke their brand a year and a half in because they see a check or they see an email that offers $1,000. And for so long, they've been trying to make money. But there's these people, and then there's these people. And it's so real. For a while, I had people telling me about this hockey stick style growth and how it's not linear. There's no linear graph in this industry. You might feel linear for a while, like, oh, I'm growing. But there was a specific moment where I hockey sticked. And it was when I started to just really lean into Instagram. And I had that moment where I was like, I'm not good enough at this yet to do a 4-hour thing. I cannot keep people's attention, and it is too long. People just don't want to listen to that right now. And went into, I need to figure out how to be exciting. First of all, sitting right here. And I also need to figure out how to be exciting in 90 seconds. So I did that for 3 months and then went to Olympic trials and had all of that intuition, Olympic swimming trials in Indianapolis, so that I could spend $250 on some like wireless mics and shoot everything on my iPhone and come away with like, I mean, at the end of it, I had 150 DMs from people telling me it was the best thing they've ever seen in swimming. And it was a guy with an iPhone sprinting around Lucas Oil Stadium trying to create content. And I still left, and I was like, I left 100 video ideas on the table. I was still frustrated. And I mean, I think that's part of what gets me, or has gotten me to this point, is that like never satisfied mentality. It did sink in when I was pinning pictures to my Instagram profile, and it was Pat McAfee and Michael Phelps. And I was like, take a second. You made both of those things happen. And I don't know. It's the money side of it is so tough because you put so many hours into it. But chase the $400,000 contract. Don't chase the $400 YouTube video.
I was gonna prompt you for this, but since you brought it up organically, you got to tell the McAfee story, start to finish.
Yeah, so that one was it was super calculated. So it might not have felt that way on social, but it was incredibly calculated. I didn't have the content per se specifically mapped out. I had actually some like content ideas on how to get his attention. I got his attention attempt 1, which I didn't expect. But I mean, I've met some people that are in the A-list space. I kind of know how they operate, and I know how difficult it is to hold their attention because they're busy people, and there's nothing else to add to that. They're just busy people. And so I wanted to get after it really early. Then I was like, I gotta wait. And I was talking to the people that were putting on Olympic trials, USA Swimming, and I was like, hey, you know what? Have you gotten him yet? And they were like, no. Like, Haven't heard from him yet. Like, we've been trying to talk to him, trying to get him there. And I was like, let me just pitch him something. Like, let me run with this. And it's one of those situations where we were just talking about it. They just said, this is what you've got. Sure. If you can get him, you can get him. And I was like, in that moment, I swear to you, I was like, he's going to show up. I'm going to get him there. And so I created this piece of content where I was like, this is attempt one. I know his brand. I know that he's an indie. So he was a specific pick because he's close by. He's like 30 minutes away or something like that. And, you know, he's the sports guy. He was number one. And he was really the only one that I was going to try to get to go to this meet because I knew it was going to be cool and I knew it would be big for the sport. If a guy like that went to a meet and my community got to see the guy in swimming right now, which is very humble of me to say, sitting next to the guy in sports. Like, that's a huge deal because those worlds are two worlds that people would have never expected to have collide. And it's kind of like seeing your favorite niche creator all of a sudden sitting next to like the guy that you see on TV and sitting at a swim meet, watching a swim meet that you're watching. So I knew it was a big thing. So I put out that piece of content where I was like, hey, if you step 1 foot inside of Lucas Oil Stadium, I'll get a tattoo on my right thigh that says for the brand. And he ended up flipping it into a tattoo on my ass later on. But maybe that was intentional. Maybe it wasn't. If it wasn't, that's one thing. If it was, it's a pretty impressive move. And I woke up after posting that video for some reason at like 3:45 in the morning. Fell asleep with my phone in my bed, which I never do. I always try to have it on my bedside table face down so I can't check the time. Had my phone in my bed, looked over at it, and just like with the sleepiest brain on, was like, I'm just gonna check it. I don't know. I think he might have replied. And so I opened my phone and I have priority notifications, swiped down, and I had a comment from McAfee and a follow. And I was like still half asleep. And so I grabbed my phone and was like, all right, we got to focus. Crafted a message right then and there and was like, here's this, and this. And so I knew that I was at least on his radar, and him following me was huge because it was, I think, and maybe I'm thinking too deeply into this, I think it was him saying, if this guy reaches out to me again, I want him to be in my priority notifications. I want to be able to see it. And so I was like, all right, I'm going to wait. I'm just going to sit here and I'm going to wait. And so I waited and then was like, all right, USA Swimming, like, can I give him like a VIP everything? And they were like, he shows up, VIP everything. So I made a VIP pass. And initially it was the real VIP pass. And luckily I was like, hey, wait a minute. Is this legit? I'm about to put this out to 70,000 swimming fans and people are they're going to sneak in. And they're like, wait, we can't post that. So I made that and I had that kind of like chambered, posted that, nothing. I DM'd him a couple times. I was like, these are the days you should show up. Like, this is the day, whatever you need. Like, I got you. I'll figure it out, which I didn't got him, but I would have figured it out. But I was just shooting from the hip thinking, it's probably not going to happen. It's probably not going to happen. And so that one was kind of like shooting a blank. Nothing came of it. And then I had, oh man, I'm going to get got for this. I made, if he sees this, I made him a cap that I totally forgot to give him. And I told him I would in one of the videos. And I held it up and I was like, you know what? This is the last time I'm going to say anything to you. It was, I think, like after day one. I wanted him to come on a Wednesday because that was the best event. That was the best we were going to be able to show him of like what we were doing. It was the best event lineup. I was like, here, like whatever, show up, don't show up, doesn't matter. He liked it, didn't comment on it or anything. And I was like, all right, like that's it. And so I'm watching swimming. I think it was either Sunday or Monday. I think it was Monday, like the second day. And I get a notification where he's like, all right, what's the best day to show up? And I was like, holy shit. Get on this, like start to, work this situation. And so I was like Wednesday, Thursday, or Friday. Wednesday's the day, but Wednesday, Thursday, or Friday. And then I think he responded and said something like, "Oh yeah, okay, like Friday might work." And then I responded and I was like, "Would really love you to come on Wednesday." And was like, "Wednesday's the day." Didn't hear back from him. And then people were continually just like tagging him and tagging him and tagging him and stuff. And I forget exactly what day it was, but I was watching this kid that, I mean, I had just gone to the range Austin with Carson Foster, who's a guy that swims at UT. We've talked a ton over the years. I've gotten to meet him 100 times, and we, were shooting at the range. And he is a guy that missed the Olympic team in 2021. Such high expectations on this kid for such a long time. I was watching him swim the 400 IM, the race that he should have made the team in. Was recording myself. I actually didn't end up posting the video. Back to our previous conversation. Didn't post it because I ended the video too early, like an idiot. I teared up. I should have just stuck that camera in my face. He had 50 meters to go in a 400-meter race, and I knew he had it locked up. I said it on camera. I was like, he's got it. Like, he went out soft enough. He's not going to die like he did in 2021, and was screaming, like, victory lap, like, enjoy it. And then was, like, starting to get choked up. He hit the wall. I literally said, I was like, I'm going to cry. And ended the recording, looked down at my phone. I know this is a long story, but it's important. Had Instagram open on my DMs, and just for some reason was like, and refreshed it, and there was a message from him that said, "We're in for Wednesday," and then his phone number. And I was like, all right, now it's time to be anxious until this this works. But I mean, it was great. He cut a promo. I asked him, I was like, do you want to like turn this into like a thing where we like, tease it and stuff? And he was like, nah, we're good. And then I was just sitting on my phone in the media room, and things started blowing up. I got texts, I got, Twitter notifications and all that stuff. And they were like, Pat McAfee just talked about you on a show. And I was like, okay. I'm going to go watch that. Hopefully it was good things. Showed up, cut a promo the day before, the day that he was going to show up. And it was bad. It was not a good promo. They called Katie Ledecky Kat Ledecky. And people were telling me like, oh, really? We're inviting this guy. I was like, just give him a chance. He shows up. He sits there, watch the swimming. Didn't really know anything about it. I mean, based on the questions he was throwing at me, didn't know anything about it. And then cut a promo the next day on his show. I was like, geez, this guy's smart. Because he didn't know a lot about swimming the day before. But then he cut a promo on the show the next day, and it was almost like listening to myself talk, which is why that dude's as successful as he is because he's able to do that. So, I mean, it was hard. It wasn't hard because I had to put in so much time and effort. I think it was difficult because I had to do it the right way. And definitely one of my prouder moments of my career for sure, even though days later I got to go take a photo with Michael Phelps in the 400 freestyle relay that I've posted 800,000 times. It's a tough one. I probably have to put the relay photo above McAfee, unfortunately. So sorry, Pat. 0% chance he's watching this because he's a busy guy. But yeah, I mean, it was a big deal for the community. And I mean, I think it's one of the things I'm trying to do now, and I think a lot of creators that are in the sports space try to do, is just legitimize myself. Go from being the creator to going to be the personality, and be someone that can be on a show that isn't swimming only, and be someone that a McAfee can feel comfortable with reaching out to, and me responding with the answer that I think he wants. And I think that's the avenue that I'm trying to get to, and I think that's the gap that I'm trying to fill. In 2 years, I could be selling swim caps professionally, but I don't know. I think that's where it is now. Sorry that I didn't give you your cap, Pat.
The USA Swimming folks I was hanging out with were so incredibly hospitable. Kyle Sockwell, who's a content creator, former Arizona State swimmer for USA Swimming, was the one that sent me the formal invite. Said he'd get a tattoo on his ass if I came. It's like, it's in Indy. It looks sweet. I'm going to come. You don't have to get a tattoo.
So thankful that you wanted to do this, and I definitely got a few words of wisdom out of you that I think people are going to be into. So I will absolutely exploit you as much as possible and ride your coattails of success and tie my name to it in some way to get people to pay attention to me. So thanks for that.
Let's do it. Let's do it.